Okay. My name is Clay Dickinson, and I will be doing the anthropogenic effects on the unique salmon reproductive cycle. Throughout this presentation, I'll be speaking about salmon worldwide. However, my main emphasis will focus on Pacific salmon, specifically in Alaska. Some basic information about salmon is that salmon contains 7 different species of Pacific salmon. Chinook or king salmon are the most well known. The other species include coho, sockeye, chum, pinks, Atlantic, and steelhead. Steelhead is actually an ocean-bound rainbow trout. However, it is grouped into the salmon family due to its similar breeding characteristics. The largest fishery for this species occurs when the steelhead make their way upstream to breed, and they are rarely caught in ocean waters. All salmon are andromous, meaning that they spend varying amounts of time in salt water where they grow and hunt. When it is time to reproduce, they return to the same nursery grounds that they were born in to spawn and in most cases die. When mature salmon reach their spawning grounds, the female will sort of dig a hole in the substrate with her fin and lay the eggs inside. Males will then fight with one another to fertilize the eggs the female has laid. One female fish can lay a few thousand eggs, however, only a small percentage of that will actually make it to the ocean. While most fish have unique nursery grounds, such as the calico bass and eelgrass beds, or surf perch in intertidal zones, salmon remain as one of the few species able to tolerate both fresh and salt water, along with always returning to the same nursery ground they were born in when it is time to spawn. Looking at the image at the right, you can notice that their colors and body shape are significantly different when they're in salt water compared to their freshwater breeding, coloration, and look. Their silver color is mostly for camouflage when hunting in oceanic waters, and their bright colors and unique shapes give them an advantage in finding a mate. Some pollution and harm. One of the most notable areas with large stocks of salmon can be seen in Alaska and the Pacific Northwest. This territory is not only a large salmon tributary with large amounts of spawning grounds, however, it also has a high amount of natural resources. Within Alaska, Bristol Bay has been a hotspot for the combination of salmon spawning streams and mineral deposits. Due to the discovery of mineral deposits, Pebble Mine Mining Company has begun its fight with politicians and locals to build a 17,000-foot wide, 4,000-foot deep mine in the heart of many salmon spawning tributaries. While this can cause fright for pollution and waste deposits from the mine, the largest issue would be the 700-foot hydroelectric dams that would power the mine and block up many salmon rivers. This would prevent salmon from obviously migrating to their breeding grounds, essentially decimating their populations. In order to highlight the benefits of the mine, Pebble Mine has offered subsidies for locals living on the land and promising jobs for the construction of the mine. However, this sounds all too similar to what happened in Owens Valley in the building of the LA Aqueduct. Owens Valley was a flourishing farm town in eastern California that is now an arid valley due to the location of the Owens River. During the time of construction, many locals were employed and landowners were given subsidies. My only question is if something similar could happen in Bristol Bay with what went down in Owens Valley. The image to the right displays the area that could be affected by the Pebble Mine in Bristol Bay. Furthermore, it would not only affect the salmon populations, however, it would also affect the drinking quality for natives and locals given the runoff from the mines. Some efforts to prevent the dams. Sadly, many of the mining operations in Alaska have the backing of local politicians striving to improve their campaign value and at times ignoring local requests. The small amount of protesting that occurs is trumped by large corporations holding all the power and money in their conquest to build on mineral-rich lands. In a sense, the local populations are stuck in having to be mostly reactive to save their fisheries instead of being more proactive in fighting the corporations. The image to the upper right illustrates one of the reactive solutions scientists and researchers have created to combat the issue of dams across different tributaries and rivers. This is called a fish ladder, or in this case, I guess, a salmon ladder. The way it works is creating different blocks with water running downstream at increasing heights so the salmon essentially jump upstream and eventually make it over the dam. This simulates the natural way that salmon would move upstream and that they have to jump over small waterfalls and other rock structures. However, it's hard to recreate this system in a way that nature intended it and like a much larger scale. That being said, many researchers argue against that they don't work at fault salmon being unable to locate and successfully use salmon ladders in large numbers. Um, one of the best ways to protect a fishery is creating no-take zones and protected land for certain stocks of salmon. This being said, most of the time it only occurs when a species becomes vulnerable or critically endangered, and at times it may be too late for the species to recover. Um, this is an area, in my opinion, that researchers and policymakers must focus on in creating protected areas for these fish while their numbers are thriving, so their populations continue to increase. As of recent, the U.S. Fish and Game has improved on this by adopting ecosystem-based management systems and protecting whole river basins, including abiotic and biotic factors, and not only protecting the target species, in this case being the salmon. This method has been proven to work in other regions, and other tributaries and other rivers along the southern east coast of the United States. However, with the anthropogenic change, it's hard to find a compromise between conservation and economic gain. The image to the lower right is the McNeil River Sanctuary. It's one of the refugee sites for salmon. The sanctuary is located the southwest of where the Pebble Mine would be located in Bristol Bay. As you can see, it's the whole river basin is protected, adopting this ecosystem-based management system, which has been proven to be more effective. Local involvement in the salmon fishery. 80% of the high-value salmon caught worldwide is fish from Alaska. These fish are exported to some of the most elite markets in the world, such as Japan and high-end sushi restaurants. Salmon is a staple in fish meal products. You can see these in some dog food, along with other fish meal products for other aquacultured species. Wild caught salmon in the U.S. brings in over $680 million annually, making it the largest species for exported fish in the United States. The growing demand for this fish continues to increase due to environmental conditions and people striving for healthier diets. The reason for this is because more environmentally conscious people are distancing themselves from red meat due to the methane emissions from domesticated cows and bovines, belches and wastes. The majority of the salmon fished for in Alaska is attributed to artisanal fisheries or small fishing fleets, usually family-owned and passed down for generations. In Alaska alone, salmon runs and oceanic salmon stocks create jobs for over 14,000 natives and locals and provides 52% of the workers' families with food. Artisanal fisheries has also been glorified by some researchers, as a more sustainable way to harvest a fish. On the contrary, there are still commercial fleets that provide lower quality salmon for the fish meal that I mentioned earlier. Furthermore, one of the largest issues in the fishing industry is illegal harvesting of fish and consumers being misled on the true origin of the fish they are purchasing. Artisanal fisheries and family-run fisheries produce a smaller catch rate, allowing for better documentation and sense of knowing the true origin of a fish. Given their smaller catch rates, they're also able to capture the fish at a much more sustainable rate. You can see the graph on the lower right-hand side. This graph illustrates the increased price over time due to the growing demand for the fish worldwide. If you look at the green line, that is the wild capture price per pound from year to year. The red line indicates the growing aquaculture industry that I will speak more on later, and the blue line is average between the two. Some future growth in aquaculture specifically. While precautionary measures are being taken, salmon are now extinct in 40% of rivers they used to inhabit. This is at fault to all the dams and pollution that I've spoken about earlier. However, another factor that can be added in is overfishing and bycatch. Bycatch occurs when a non-target species is caught in a trolling or purse seine net, and in most cases is fatal for the non-target species. One of the best examples for this is the cod fishery up in Alaska. A lot of the times when fishermen are trolling for cod, salmon can be entangled in their nets, and it's usually fatal for the fish. With all these factors combined, And with the demand continuing to increase, a lot of aquaculture farms have sprung up in Alaska and worldwide in an effort to lower wild capture take. Aquaculture is essentially the cultivation and breeding of a species for the consumption of humans or in the use of animal feed and other products such as fish oil, pills, and stuff like that. The two main types are land-based systems and water-based systems. Land-based systems include large pools that are regularly filtered, utilized for crustaceans, mollusks, small fin fish, and like the recruitment of smaller juvenile fish. Water-based systems utilize the natural ocean water and simply fence off a region to control and grow certain species of fish or mollusk. So, in terms of a salmon fishery, it would be the small juvenile fish would be in more of a land-based system, and as they get larger and grow, they would be moved into a more water-based system. Salmon is one of the largest aquaculture industries, with 75% of salmon sold in the global market being farmed. As illustrated to the graph on the right, from 1990 to 2015, there is said to be a 1,000% increase in the amount of farmed salmon. This is extremely beneficial to local communities where farms are created, providing jobs for locals and a constant food source for people in rural areas. This image below just indicates one of the water-based systems for the larger adult salmon. The need for wild salmon. While aquaculture has many positives in aiding the wild salmon stocks, at times can be detrimental to those wild stocks. For one, farm salmon contains contaminants not associated with wild salmon, and when the waste products are concentrated in such a large area, wild salmon surrounding aquaculture pools cease to exist. The toxins are obtained from an unnatural diet of fish meal, leaving salmon to have higher levels of dioxins and mercury in their meat. While this is not only detrimental to wild salmon species, it's also harmful to human health. Studies have been undertaken have associated higher levels of carcinogens in farm-raised salmon from pesticides compared to the wild-caught salmon. This could lead to health complications and in even some extreme cases, cancer. Another one of the issues with the farm-raised fish is the human choice between the two. If you just look at the physical look of the fish in the top right, you can see that the wild salmon has a definite pink color with small fat lines, and on the left you can see that the farm salmon has much more of a tan color with larger fat lines. Failed water-based systems occur when a tank breaks or a cage breaks and the farm species are released into the wild population. Even though there are salmon, they're considered an invasive species and at times cannot breed with the wild salmon. Furthermore, they are not being recruited in natural tributaries, so they don't have that natural instinct to travel upstream and spawn in the fresh water. Overall, while aquaculture is a good option to help struggling wild populations, it must be balanced with adequate wild species protection and proper maintainment of aquaculture pools. In doing my research, I had a couple takeaways. The first was essentially this theory about a black box. I'm currently in Environmental Studies 310, and this is a term we work with a decent amount. It essentially means where we know where they spawn and we know where the adults finish, but we kind of don't know how they get from point A to point B. That kind of carries me to my next point, is that the need for data collection is necessary on capture rates to put the pieces together of like how they get from point A to point B in this black box. And the only way that regulations and sanctuaries can be set up is the backing of scientific data on capture rates of the current status of a species. With this knowledge, it is hard to pass regulations, protect fisheries, and have the means to enforce them. Finally, it's necessary to be proactive and not reactive, because sometimes protecting a species too late, there can be unknown complications that we didn't foresee, such as outside predators and such. So it's necessary to gather this data, understand and do more research and properly protect these species. And with the proper protection, aquaculture methods, and cooperation with outside corporations, the species can coexist with anthropogenic change. There's my works cited, and thank you.